Today, the topic which I am going to present here is global leadership through Indian tradition. First of all, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude and thanks to whole team of GSTS and especially Dr. Manish Karamwar sir and our guest of honor, Dr. Satyam Kumar sir, for providing me such an opportunity to present my thoughts and understanding in front of you. Uh, my name is Anjali and I have completed my graduation from Indraprastha College for Women in Political Science and Masters from Department of Political Science only. My motivation behind choosing this topic was that it engages with India's rich intellectual tradition. As a student of political science, the course which was taught to me, basically related to the international relation, has helped me to develop my understanding and intrigued me to develop my interest in this subject. At this time when we are seeing that the world is moving towards multipolarity, I believe there is a pressing need to move beyond the Eurocentric framework and to portray India not just as a regional actor but also as a Vishwaguru. So, before moving further, I would like to present my objective of this topic is to explore the indigenous framework in the international relations, to reimagine the IR beyond Eurocentrism, and to explore the relevance for today's global order in evolving foreign policy, providing and also to provide an alternative lens for navigating in today's multipolar world order. As we know that our international relations discipline has long been shaped by the Western historical experiences, particularly from Europe and North America. जो आज हम लोग dominant theories जो most of the universities and the course we are reading today is based on realism, liberalism and constructivism only, which is in the context of Western geopolitics. uh, Basically which began from the Treaty of Westphalia and two World War and the Cold War. Now, however, these theories were insightful and they often assume their concepts of sovereignty, rational self-interest, and anarchy and balance of power as universally applicable. But when we think about many non-Western societies, especially from India, our own political and philosophical traditions, they were emerged much earlier than the Westphalian state system. And we are not knowing about our own political and philosophical traditions uh, because they are limiting and even exclusionary in nature. So I believe that we as students of international relations must pose some important questions to ourselves, that why is our own intellectual tradition is missing from this core curriculum of global political thought. And more importantly, can our own philosophical ideas, particularly rooted in the concept of dharma, can offer a fresh perspective to navigate in today's multipolar world? We know that our own civilizational values are they provide an alternative lens to view the international politics, and our international politics is central to our concept of dharma. Dharma is our own world view. Now, when we talk about dharma, what is the meaning of dharma? By dharma, we do not simply mean duty or the law, but we mean how our actions are governed. And we also refers to how our cosmic moral order, on the basis of which our international relations should be based upon. Many of the ancient texts like Mahabharata, Arthashastra, they offer us a very nuanced perspective of how peace, war, and alliance making should be. And they were developed much before the IR theories or the academic discipline of IR took its shape. When we see India's growing role on the global stage, be it G20, BRICS, or Indo Pacific, we see that there is an increasing need for our own policy makers and scholars as well to draw from these indigenous traditions and civilizations to shape our own foreign policy. And when we talk about our own homegrown theorization or the way to shape our own foreign policy and on the basis of our own civilizational values, we do not mean that we are we are negating the Western political thought, or we are rejecting this Western political thought. We mean that we need to decolonize it and diversify it to make our spaces more pluralistic and to develop a multiple ways of thinking. Uh, India's aspiration to become a Vishwaguru is based on our own moral and intellectual guide for the world. Through soft power, ethical leadership, and diplomacy is rooted in its ancient traditions. For students and policymakers, exploring these kind of perspectives is essential. I believe not only for the academic discourse, but also to understand our own foreign policy, to understand our own strategic move, which is globally effective and rooted in the Indian values. In today's era, where the global south demands a greater voice, I believe ancient Indian traditions offer us insights to the ethical diplomacy, sustainable development, and peaceful coexistence. Therefore, through this topic, my main aim is to introduce it to the rich intellectual history of India and international thought, and examine how it challenges the Western paradigm and explore its relevance for today's global order. Now, before delving deeper into this topic, uh, we must first try to understand our foundation of Hindu theories of international relations through the concept of Dharma, Dandaniti, and Raj Dharma. Now, our own Hindu political thought, which are preserved in these texts of Vedas, Mahabharata, and Ramayana, they offer a very distinctive framework for our own interstate relations. Now, Raj Dharma. What do we mean by Raj Dharma? Raj Dharma basically it implies that the king must act in the interest of public good to uphold justice, maintain social harmony. Similarly, Dandaniti, which is well exemplified through the Chanakya text of Arthashastra, it means that the stability of the state require a balance between how our moral conduct should be and our practical power. The king must both be a philosopher and a realist, which is as opposed to the Machiavelli thought of international relations, which state that the king should be like a fox and a lion. Now, this fusion of ethics and pragmatism is a hallmark of our Hindu theory of international relations. Similarly, Kautilya's mandala theory, which was developed much earlier than the than the discipline of international relations came into its existence. Kautilya has written his Arthashastra in 4th century BC, and the evolving discipline of international relations uh, came during 1930s and 1940s, only after the First World War. And Kautilya's mandala theory has many similarities also from the Western realists like Machiavelli, Hobbes, etc., which the main aim of diplomacy, here Kautilya states in its Arthashastra, is to not just a mere conquest, but also to establish world order and prosperity. Similarly, the just war philosophy of Mahabharata, which is outshrined in the Bhagavad Gita, states that the war is justified only at last resort, which must be guided by moral restraints and professionality. So, the classical Hindu political thought, especially from these texts, provides us insights into our interstate relations, diplomacy, war, and peace. So, before going further, first we'll try to understand how our Indian IR thought is different from the Western IR paradigm. Our Western IR thought, where the power is not seen as an end in itself, but as an instrument, which but as an instrument to navigate the world politics on the basis of self-interest, which is diametrically opposite to the Indian IR thought, where we see power comes with accountability, and this accountability is to the higher moral order, which is based on the principle of dharma. While our Western realist focuses on the power maximizing, Indian thought emphasizes dharma, which is ethical statecraft and the ruler responsibility to ensure justice, stability, and welfare. Similarly, when we try to understand our worldview, how it is different from the Western point of view, we can say that our worldview is cosmological in the sense. We have a holistic understanding of the worldview, where we see that all human beings are interconnected among each other. Therefore, we believe in the principle of Vasudev Kutumbakam. And this is in contrast to the Western political thought, where their worldview is based on separation of human agency from nature and spirit. Our Indian civilization thought have always promoted pluralism, and conflict resolution is often approached through dialogue, balance, and relational diplomacy rather than the coercive power or zero-sum competition. Now, many of the key scholars from the Indian perspective have written about how our international relation thought can offer an alternative perspective to the world, especially from the articles of the scholars like Navneeta Chadda Behra, who has written about provincializing IR through the secular cosmology of Dharma. In her work, Professor Behra tries to explain the idea of secular cosmology of Dharma, which provides an alternative to IR models. She is very careful to point out that by dharma, we does not mean any religion. It is not theological in the sense, but rather it is a framework for our own actions, our own ethical actions that governs the domestic rule. Through the idea of secular cosmology, she tries to challenge the binary thinking which is present in the Western IR philosophy. She tries to explain the differences between this secular or religious and state and non-state or rational or emotional. She explains that our concept of dharma offers a kind of holistic view of the world order, and she tries to uh, give a call for a provincializing approach to IR. And through this provincializing approach, she calls for recognizing that there are multiple cosmologies and ethical orders which should be given space in the theories of international relations. Similarly, when we try to reclaim our own epistemic agency of how our worldview should be, several scholars, also like Amitabh Acharya and Barry Bhujan, in their works have explained, and they call for a pluralistic epistemology. They try to basically reject this notion of Western IR, and which is universalistic in nature. Kanti Bajpai critiques their own Indian community for uncritically borrowing this Western theory, and he advocates for developing an IR which is grounded in India's own historical and philosophical experiences. Next, we will try to understand India's strategic behavior through the lens of dharma. Now, before understanding the India's strategic behavior through the lens of dharma, there are some of the questions which I think as a student of international relations we must reflect upon, that why from the initial days India has always pursued strategic autonomy rather than joining any fixed alliances, or why does it always try to balance between the power rivalries like US or the Russia, or be the part of both groups like Quad and BRICS? Why India, in the context of international relations, have always tried to avoid this kind of moral absolutism in the global conflicts? Now, such kind of question, when we will try to reflect upon, tells us about the core of India's unique approach to international strategy, an approach that becomes more clearer when we will analyze it through the lens of dharma rather than the Western IR framework of realism and liberalism. When we try to study about the Western international relations, उनका जो strategic behavior है is always explained in terms of realist assumption, which is exemplified from the Morgenthau concept of nation interest is guided in terms of self-interest. They try to seek power and operate in the world of anarchy where survival of the fittest is important. The alliances are mostly rigid, and these alliances are transactional and interest driven. But in contrast, when we think about our own Indian strategic thought, which is deeply influenced by dharma or the Arth Shastra, it is more ethical, pragmatic, and context specific approach to diplomacy and security. When we think about the Indian strategical approach through the lens of dharma, dharma is not merely moral righteousness, but it is also about the duty. And ये जो ड्यूटी है ये आइसोलेशन में नहीं है, ये ड्यूटी कॉन्टेक्चुअल ड्यूटी है, ऐसा ड्यूटी जो कि हमें रिक्वायर करता है कि हम एक्ट करें with at the right time, with at the right place, and maintain this balance of power. So dharma promotes such actions that sustain cosmic social balance and avoid such extremities and prevent the long-term instability. Therefore, the India's strategic autonomy, when we studied about it, was first institutionalized from the non-aligned movement during the Cold War. And now we have upgraded it to the multilateral approach. Rather than committing to any one ideological bloc or the military alliances, we prefer flexible partnerships based on issue-based cooperation, national interest, and long-term stability. That is why we have always pursued an strategic autonomy instead of joining any fixed alliances. When we analyze our dharma-based strategic behavior through current example, which can be taken as Russia-Ukraine conflict, where India has tried to maintain a balanced and pragmatic stance, calling for the respect and sovereignty of both the nations. Meanwhile, India has also tried to engage with both Russia and the West. So here we have tried to avoid this moral absolutism, which is mostly common in the Western narratives, but not in the Indian context. So we follow a contextual ethic while maintaining our own strategic interest and promoting peace. Similarly, in the case of membership of Quad and BRICS nation, when we see that it is contradictory in the Western terms, but however, when we reflect it from dharmic point of view, it reflects our Shadgun principles of Arth Shastra. Now, these principles advise our rulers to adopt strategies to evolving power dynamics and not fix our loyalties to any particular groups or ideological blocs. So we have always followed contextual pragmatism over the moral absolutism. So our Indian diplomacy have always reflected a nuanced understanding where where we have tried to break the boundaries of the Western philosophy, where we try to break these boundaries of good versus evil or democracy versus autocracy. Our actions are evaluated on the basis of impact on balance, stability, and long-term welfare, not on ideological purity. So, this dharmic approach is not indecisive or weak. It is adoptive, morally grounded, and long-term oriented. India sees its role not merely as a power seeker but also as a stabilizer and moral actor in the global system. While studying about our dharmic approach to international relations, our aim is for a balanced world. In today's era of multiplurality and the global flux, we have seen that how such a model provide an important alternative to Western strategic rigidity. However, we have faced several challenges in the global recognition for the India's civilizational IR thought. And some of these challenges are the institutional dominance of the Western syllabus, which is the foremost barrier in the curriculum worldwide. Our core IR syllabus till date is which are taught in most of the universities revolved around the thinkers like Hobbes, Locke, Morgenthau, Walls, leaving behind a very little space for our non-Western voices. And our Indian civilizational perspective is often reduced to just area studies, or it is rather treated as exceptions, or rather than a theory which is trying to produce a new kind of tradition. There is also a challenge of lack of standardized translation and interpretation of the text. There's a very limited, reliable, or accessible context-specific translation is available. And most of the translations which are available is either filtered through a colonial lens or Orientalist lenses, which are missing the philosophical depth. Also, there is fragmentation and lack of interdisciplinary research. Indian IR thought, which is spread across several disciplines like philosophy, Sanskrit studies, political science, history, they are rarely integrated. So also there's in today's era there is a pressing need for this multidisciplinary scholarship so that we can synthesize our own Indian classical ideas with contemporary international relations theories. However, despite these challenges, our current geopolitical climate and India's growing influences offer us a unique opportunity to reassert our own intellectual traditions on the global stage. There is always a call for renewed non-Western epistemologies. Western liberal universalism is now facing a crisis because the world we are moving toward is increasingly becoming multipolar. And this offers a space for us to culturally show our knowledge system. This opens a space for an alternative. Scholars, institutions, and think tanks are now becoming more open than before to engage with the decolonized and pluralistic approach to international relations. Also, we are getting supports from many Indian institutions like ICSSR, Information System for Developing Countries, and Indian Knowledge System, which have been developed under the Ministry of Education. Through their conferences, funding, fellowships, and publications, these platforms are supporting research that links ancient thought with contemporary global challenges. Also, India's foreign policy behavior like non-alignment, strategic autonomy, multi-alignment is increasingly reflecting this civilizational logic. So at last, I would like to conclude that India's rise as a Vishwaguru is not merely an aspirational slogan, but it is grounded in the rich tapestry of the India's political philosophy, which is rooted in our own context of dharma. And this Hindu theory of international relations offer a very relational, normative, and pluralistic approaches, which is against this secular realism of the West. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Anjali, for such a thought-provoking session emphasizing the need to look back to the Indian core values and its Dharma ideology as its diplomatical tool for international matters. We have some questions regarding today's talk, which you have given. So let's take them one by one. सो जो जो पहला क्वेश्चन मैं ले रहा हूँ वो है रिगार्डिंग द यूरोसेंट्रिज्म इन एजुकेशन सिस्टम। आपने भी इस बारे में बात की कि हम एजुकेशन सिस्टम में वेस्टर्न फिलोसफर्स को पढ़ते हैं, वेस्टर्न थ्योरीज पढ़ते हैं। तो ये जो प्रॉब्लम है हमारे इंडियन एजुकेशन सिस्टम में, सो हाउ वी कैन गो बियॉन्ड दिस, हाउ वी कैन हम इंडियन गुरुकुल सिस्टम को या इंडियन गुरुकुल सिस्टम से निकली हुई लीडरशिप फिलोसफीज को कैसे वापस ला सकते हैं?
Yes. So yes, there are challenges, and we are facing these challenges कि बहुत सारा challenge, lack of, there is fragmentation of text, uh, our of our ancient texts like Ramayana, Mahabharata, but we need to uh, we need to study about these texts through the academic discourse. I believe there is a need for much more translation for this text, because जो translations पहले हो चुके हैं वो either they are filtered through colonial or orientalist lenses, so वो फिर घूम फिर के western academic discourse को ही popularize करता है rather than our own indigenous thought. So, if we need to develop our own indigenous thought and present our own homegrown theorization to this world, we need to produce more and more translation of this ancient text, I believe.
That's a very good answer. Now, moving to the next question, it is about कि योगा और मेडिटेशन हमारे इंडियन ट्रेडिशन में रूटेड हैं, बहुत पहले से रूटेड है। तो योगा और मेडिटेशन का क्या इन्फ्लुएंस हो सकता है और क्या अच्छी लीडरशिप इफेक्टिवनेस हो सकती है ग्लोबल लेवल पर, इफ वी टॉक अबाउट द डिप्लोमेसी, द इंडियन डिप्लोमेसी?
Yes, through yoga and meditation, we can move forward to our soft power diplomacy. Uh, हम लोग सॉफ्ट पावर डिप्लोमेसी के थ्रू आगे बढ़ सकते हैं। योगा और मेडिटेशन को पॉपुलराइज करके हम लोग एज वी कैन शो आवरसेल्फ दैट our indigenous cultures and traditions, how it is rooted in our own philosophical terms. It provides, and we can create our own space in this, in the academia of international relations.
Okay, so the last question which I'm taking is the second last question which I'm taking is that by Mr. Javardhan Kumar, and he's asking ki how Indian philosophical, although you have also explained it, but how Indian philosophical traditions like Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam and Dharma can reimagine. He's talking about can reimagine to shape a sustainable and inclusive model of global leadership in the 21st century.
ओके, सो जो हम लोग इंडियन फिलोसफिकल टर्म्स के बारे में बात करते हैं थ्रू द लेंस ऑफ धर्मा, I believe dharma provides us a very alternative insights to look into our own way of projecting the international relation, or so or reflecting our own worldview through the lens of dharma, because the western international relations are mostly based on realist assumption, which is power centric in nature, जहाँ पे वो लोग स्टेट्स को इस तरीके से देखते हैं कि दे आर anarchic in nature, and where the survival of the fittest is of most important. But जब हम लोग इंडियन कॉन्टेक्स्ट में देखते हैं तो हमारा जो वर्ल्ड व्यू है इज कॉस्मोलॉजिकल. कॉस्मोलॉजिकल मीन्स द इंटरकनेक्टेडनेस ऑफ ह्यूमन बीइंग. We do not see separation of human agency from nature and spirit. But in the Western sense, we see that there is a separation of human nature and spirit. Their interests are mostly power driven, seeking their own self-interest. So, through the lens of dharma, I believe that we can present this alternative to the world.
Okay, yeah, all right. So the last question which I'm asking you is कि आपका इस प्लेटफॉर्म GSTS के साथ क्या एक्सपीरियंस रहा थ्रू आउट द वीक, अगर आप कुछ शेयर करना चाहते हैं हमारे ऑडियंस के साथ तो.
I have a very great experience, and I would like to thank Manish sir and whole GSTS team, and also our guest of honor for providing me this platform and opportunity to present my thoughts in front of everyone. It was really a wonderful experience to be the part of this platform and looking forward for more such initiatives.
Thank you so much, Miss Anjali, and once again, congratulations for such a wonderful presentation today. Now, proceeding further, I would like to invite our guest of honor, Dr. Satyam Kumar, once again, for his final remarks over today's topic, over this talk, and over this initiative.
So sorry for that. Thank you, Sailendra, once again. And thank you, Anjali, for your beautiful presentation. So here, the global leadership through Indian traditions. So many words I can define in your presentation. I have noted down. Even while you were speaking, I was writing it. So it was very interesting while listening these things. Because the word dharma and the presentation you have done, everyone knows these all the things, but the way you have presented to correlating with the historians view and the scholars with the western and indian also, we sometimes think about the indian scholars also only, but what about the western? So you have compared very well, and at the end the challenges part you have discussed with, it was really, it is the problem with that in the ancient time itself we have rich literature. Even as a student of history, and all of you also, you know about that. Even agar Nalanda and that many universities ka book nahi jalaya gaya ho, to still we could have a rich one. After that only we are having that much. And so that in that context, the literature point of view and the philosopher, as we are having nowadays, we are listening that you're given the example of Kautilya and Chanakya, as Kautilya basically. So he was writing that time, and it's a core relevant for this time current scenario when the world is going on with the crisis, Russia-Ukraine war and all. So India played an important role being neutral. So as we know that the dharma, we think about the dharma, you can imagine about the Gandhiji. He also said the word, and with the satyagraha, he used the word dharma. So basically, you have also talked about the Raj Dharma, Danda, and four aspects. It was like, yeah, Raj Dharma, Danda, and Kautilya's Arthastra, Mandala's theory, and the last one is just war in the Mahabharata. So what things were going on, we have to just follow. But here in Indian context, the context of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, and the world is one family. That's where we are trying to uh, coordinate with all the things. So we can also remember one more thing I just want to add. So let's remember that the global leadership is not only about the commanding power. It's about the commanding respect to everyone. So that's while keeping this all things in the mind. And at the end, the questions were coming from the part of yoga and the tradition. I'll add some more points like the digital public goods and the climate justice, equitable growth, these all things, the kind of harmony we are creating. That's why we are rich in our literature, in our philosophy. I know that some lack are there because in the syllabus what we are teaching, because so much of crisis is there, no that much translations are not available. But once again we have started. Still you can find the history is also being writing nowadays. So the things we are reading, we were reading earlier, and currently what we are reading in the same way, in context of literature, in context of the dharma and the kind of leadership what we are doing, the current government is also doing, it's commendable. So it can be a great example for whole world. So by not taking that much time, I'll also congratulate once again, and thank you the whole team, the core team, and along with that, Dr. Manish Karmwaz sir, for that giving me this much of opportunity once again to you come to this big platform and speak in front of you people also. Anjali has also done well. So congratulations, Anjali, once again. And I heartfelt congratulations to the team also. And especially I thank you, Dr. Manish Kanwar, sir,